Hey everyone, today I'm diving into one of the most disturbing, mind-boggling, and unsolved cases in American history. This story is so compelling that once you hear it, you'll be thinking about it for days. The name is Kendrick Johnson, and this case has divided America like few others. If you're ready, let's dive into this dark mystery together. An ordinary day that changed everything. January 10th, 2013, started like any other day at Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia. 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was everyone's favorite kid, tall, athletic, and friendly. He played basketball, football, and ran track. That morning when he left home, his family gave him their usual "see you later." Nobody imagined it would be the last time they'd see him alive. Kendrick was the kind of teenager who lit up rooms when he walked in. His teachers loved him, his classmates respected him, and he had that infectious smile that could make anyone's day better. He was a three-sport athlete with dreams of college and a future beyond the small town of Valdosta. That Thursday seemed perfectly normal. He attended his classes, joked around with friends, and everything was going according to routine. But something happened during lunch break. Kendrick headed to the old gymnasium, and that's where his story takes a terrifying turn. He was never seen alive again, and the circumstances of what happened next have haunted America for over a decade. The horrific discovery. Friday morning, January 11th, 2013, brought one of the most shocking discoveries in Georgia's history. Students at Lowndes High School were climbing on top of rolled-up wrestling mats in the old gymnasium when they noticed something that made their blood run cold: a pair of feet sticking out from inside one of the mats. The scene was absolutely horrifying. Kendrick's body was found headfirst, completely inverted, inside a vertical wrestling mat that was about 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Only his feet were visible, and he was completely trapped inside this narrow space. The students who found him experienced what would undoubtedly be the worst moment of their young lives. When the police arrived, the initial impression was that this had to be some kind of freak accident. Maybe Kendrick had been trying to retrieve something from inside the mat and had somehow fallen in head first. But even from the beginning, something about the whole situation felt wrong to many people who saw the scene. The official story: tragic accident. The Lowndes County Sheriff's Office moved with incredible speed. Within just 24 hours, they had ruled Kendrick's death an accident. Their official explanation was straightforward. Kendrick had been trying to retrieve a sneaker from inside or behind the wrestling mat when he fell head first into the mat and became trapped. According to investigators, it was common for students to store their gym shoes behind or underneath the rolled-up mats because the school's lockers were insufficient. The theory was that Kendrick reached into the mat to grab his shoe, lost his balance, fell in head first, and couldn't get out. The narrow confines of the mat prevented him from breathing properly, leading to what medical examiners called positional asphyxia, essentially suffocating because of his body position. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation conducted an autopsy and agreed with this assessment. Their official report stated that Kendrick died from positional asphyxia and that there was no evidence of foul play. Case closed, they said. But was it really that simple? Many people immediately questioned this explanation. How does a healthy, athletic 17-year-old accidentally fall into a mat and become so hopelessly trapped that he can't escape? And why was the investigation wrapped up so quickly? A family's fight for truth. Kendrick's parents, Jacqueline and Kenneth Johnson, never bought the official story for a single second. They knew their son better than anyone, and they insisted that Kendrick would never have climbed into a wrestling mat. "We know how Kendrick was," his mother said. "He would have never crawled up in no mat." The family pointed out several troubling inconsistencies that raised serious red flags. First, Kendrick was found without shoes, but his own sneakers were still on his feet. Why would he be looking for shoes when he was already wearing his? Second, the speed of the investigation seemed suspicious. How could such a complex death be ruled accidental in just 24 hours? Third, there were problems with the surveillance camera footage from the school, with some cameras mysteriously not working or missing crucial time periods. The Johnson family also revealed that Kendrick had been having problems at school with two brothers named Brian and Brandon Bell. These weren't just random students. Their father, Rick Bell, was a former FBI agent. The Johnsons believed that this connection might explain why the investigation seemed rushed and why certain evidence appeared to be overlooked or dismissed. As the family dug deeper, they became convinced that their son had been murdered and that powerful people were covering it up. The shocking second autopsy. Determined to find the truth, the Johnson family made the difficult decision to have Kendrick's body exhumed for an independent autopsy. They hired Dr. William Anderson, a private pathologist from Florida, to conduct a thorough examination. What he found completely contradicted the official story and sent shockwaves through the case. Dr. Anderson concluded that Kendrick had died from blunt force trauma to the right side of his neck, not from positional asphyxia. In other words, someone had struck him with enough force to kill him. The pathologist found evidence of hemorrhaging in the neck area that was consistent with inflicted injury. This wasn't an accident. This was homicide. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. When Dr. Anderson opened Kendrick's body for the autopsy, he made a horrifying discovery that would add a whole new dimension to this already mysterious case. The newspaper scandal, missing organs. What Dr. Anderson found inside Kendrick's body was beyond belief. Every single organ from his skull to his pelvis was missing. His heart, lungs, liver, brain, everything was gone. In place of his organs, someone had stuffed his body cavity with old newspapers, including Black Friday advertisements and J.C. Penney catalogs. "They stuffed my son's body with newspaper like he was a garbage can," Kenneth Johnson said, his voice filled with anguish. The family had buried their son thinking they were laying him to rest whole, but they had unknowingly buried only half of him. This discovery raised immediate questions about who was responsible. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation claimed they had returned all organs to the body after their autopsy, which was standard procedure. However, the funeral home that handled Kendrick's body, Harrington Funeral Home, said they never received the organs from the coroner. The coroner, Bill Watson, claimed that the organs were too decomposed to preserve and had been disposed of before the body was sent to the funeral home. But this explanation didn't satisfy forensic experts. Dr. Gregory Schmunk, president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, told CNN he had never heard of stuffing a body with newspaper. Standard practice would be to use cotton, sawdust, or special embalming materials. Where were Kendrick's organs? Who had removed them? And why was his body filled with newspapers? These questions remain unanswered to this day. Federal investigation begins. The pressure from the Johnson family and growing public outrage forced federal authorities to take action. In October 2013, U.S. Attorney Michael Moore announced that the Department of Justice would open a formal review of Kendrick Johnson's death. This was a major development that gave the family hope that they might finally get answers. The federal investigation was massive in scope. FBI agents analyzed surveillance footage from 62 different cameras around the school, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and re-examined all the physical evidence. They looked into the Bell brothers and other potential suspects, with a thoroughness that the local investigation had apparently lacked. The investigation also included sophisticated video analysis conducted at FBI headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. Agents spent months trying to piece together exactly what had happened on January 10th and 11th, 2013. For 3 years, the Johnson family held on to hope that the federal investigation would uncover the truth about their son's death and bring his killers to justice. The Bell family under federal scrutiny. The federal investigation focused heavily on Brian and Brandon Bell, the two brothers who had been Kendrick's classmates. Brian and Brandon Bell were sons of Rick Bell, a respected FBI agent who had served with the Bureau for years. The family had been living what many would consider the American dream: a federal agent father, 2 athletically gifted sons, and a comfortable life in Valdosta. 2 years before Kendrick's death, there had been a brief altercation between Kendrick and one of the Bell brothers on a school bus during a trip to a football game. The fight was quickly broken up, and both boys were punished by being kept from playing in the game. Most people would have considered this a typical teenage disagreement that was quickly forgotten. However, the Johnson family believed this incident was the root of ongoing tensions that eventually led to Kendrick's death. In their wrongful death lawsuit, they alleged that the Bell brothers had been encouraged by their FBI agent father to violently assault Kendrick, leading to his death. The federal investigation became so intense that in July 2015, government agents executed search warrants at the Bell family home, Brian Bell's college dorm room, and the homes of other individuals connected to the case. Rick Bell and his sons were even issued target letters by the U.S. Attorney's Office, indicating they were being investigated as potential defendants in criminal proceedings. The Bell family maintained their complete innocence throughout this ordeal. In rare public statements, Brandon Bell told WSB-TV, "I want everyone to know the truth. They can ridicule me and they can say whatever they want. But in the end, the truth will prevail, and everybody will find me and my brother are innocent and have always been innocent." Surveillance video, the missing hours. One of the most controversial aspects of the case involved the surveillance footage from Lowndes High School. The Johnson family's attorneys argued that the video evidence had been tampered with or edited to hide what really happened to Kendrick. Analysis of the surveillance system revealed significant gaps in the footage. 2 cameras in the gymnasium were missing an hour and 5 minutes of recording, with their hiatus ending at 1:09 p.m. when Johnson entered the gym. Another pair of cameras were missing 2 hours and 10 minutes each, not beginning to record again until 1:15 and 1:16 p.m. Video analysis expert Grant Fredericks found these gaps highly suspicious, especially considering the critical timing. How could so much footage be missing during the exact time period when Kendrick disappeared? However, the FBI's comprehensive analysis in 2014 concluded that the discrepancies in video footage timestamps were caused by technical issues, including video servers not being centrally located, not being connected to each other, and not being manually reset after maintenance. The analysis also determined that the area where Johnson's body was discovered, where the gym mats were stored, was not covered by surveillance cameras, and that camera systems were motion activated. Despite these technical explanations, many people remained convinced that the footage had been deliberately altered to hide evidence of foul play. 2016, federal investigation closes. After 3 years of intensive investigation, the Department of Justice delivered a crushing blow to the Johnson family. In June 2016, federal authorities announced they would not be filing any criminal charges related to Kendrick's death. The official statement was devastating in its finality. After extensive investigation into this tragic event, federal investigators determined that there is insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone or some group of people willfully violated Kendrick Johnson's civil rights or committed any other prosecutable federal crime. The federal investigation had examined every aspect of the case using the most advanced forensic techniques available. They had analyzed surveillance footage, conducted interviews, and followed up on every lead. Despite all of this effort, they concluded that there simply wasn't enough evidence to prove that a crime had been committed. For the Johnson family, this decision was heartbreaking. 3 years of hope and waiting had ended, with the same conclusion that local authorities had reached in 24 hours, that Kendrick's death was an accident. The third autopsy and new allegations. In 2018, WALB television obtained results from a third autopsy conducted on Kendrick Johnson. This autopsy, which appeared to be an addendum to the second autopsy report from 2013, determined that Johnson's cause of death was non-accidental blunt force trauma to his right neck and right thorax. Even more shocking was an affidavit included with the autopsy results. According to this document, a witness had given testimony stating that an acquaintance confessed that the person struck Kendrick Johnson in the neck with a 45-pound weight or dumbbell. The affidavit also alleged that an agent in some way facilitated the editing of the high school's surveillance video by corrupting or deleting some 1 hour and 25 minutes of the original recording. These new allegations suggested not only that Kendrick had been murdered with a heavy weight, but that there had been a deliberate effort to destroy video evidence of the crime. The allegations pointed to FBI involvement in covering up the murder, which would explain why the case had been so difficult to solve. However, these claims would soon prove to be just another dead end in the long search for truth. 2021. The fake confession scandal. In March 2021, the Johnson family approached Lowndes County Sheriff Ashley Polk with what they claimed was a smoking gun, an audio recording they said they had paid $1,000 for, after being contacted by a man claiming to be the Bell brothers' second cousin. The recording allegedly contained a confession to Kendrick's murder. This development led Sheriff Polk to reopen the case, giving the Johnson family new hope that they might finally get justice for their son. The possibility that someone had actually confessed to the crime seemed like the breakthrough the family had been waiting for. However, investigators quickly determined that the audio recording was fake. The man who created the fraudulent tape eventually admitted to producing it. Once again, what appeared to be a major breakthrough in the case turned out to be nothing more than a cruel hoax. The fake confession scandal highlighted just how desperate people had become to either solve or exploit this case, and it demonstrated the ongoing pain and frustration that the Johnson family continued to endure. 2022, the final official investigation. Sheriff Polk conducted one final comprehensive investigation, spending 13 months reviewing every aspect of the case. In January 2022, he released his findings, which definitively rejected the murder theory. Polk's investigation found no homicide, no cover-up, no conspiracy in the January 2013 death of the teen. It was simply a tragic and bizarre accident. The report specifically noted that FBI video analysis had confirmed Brian and Brandon Bell never crossed paths with Kendrick on the day he died, and that Brandon Bell had left campus an hour before Kendrick's body was discovered. Despite offering a $500,000 reward from his own money for information leading to a conviction, Sheriff Polk received no credible tips that would suggest Kendrick had been murdered. legal battles continue. The Johnson family has never given up their legal fight for justice. In 2015, they filed a $100 million wrongful death lawsuit against 38 individuals, including the Bell brothers, school officials, and law enforcement officers, alleging murder and conspiracy to cover up the crime. However, in August 2017, Georgia Judge Richard Porter ordered the Johnson family and their attorney to pay more than $292,000 in legal fees to the defendants. The judge ruled that testimony shows that they had no evidence to support their claims that the brothers killed Johnson or that any of the other defendants engaged in a conspiracy to conceal the cause or manner of Johnson's death. Despite this setback, the family filed a new $1 billion lawsuit in 2023, targeting the FBI, GBI, and local authorities for their handling of the case. As of 2025, this lawsuit continues to work its way through the courts, with the family maintaining their belief that their son was murdered and that there has been a massive cover-up. The community divided. The Kendrick Johnson case has torn the Valdosta community apart, largely along racial lines. Kendrick was black, the Bell brothers are white, and many people see the case through the lens of racial injustice and systemic inequality. The Bell family has received over 100 death threats that have been turned over to the FBI. Their lives have been completely upended by the allegations, with one son losing college football scholarship opportunities and the entire family living under constant scrutiny and threats. Community leaders, including Reverend Floyd Rose, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and former NAACP chapter president Lee Touchton, have examined the case and publicly stated that the ongoing accusations against the Bell family are unfounded. The search for truth continues. The Kendrick Johnson case represents one of the most puzzling and divisive death investigations in recent American history. On one side, you have multiple official investigations, including a 3-year federal probe, that have found no evidence of foul play. On the other side, you have a grieving family that refuses to accept that their son's death was an accident, pointing to suspicious circumstances and unexplained evidence. The case has become a symbol of larger issues in American society: racial justice, police accountability, and the power of social media to shape public opinion. The #sign Justice for Kendrick has been used millions of times, and the case has been featured in documentaries, news programs, and countless online discussions. Whether you believe Kendrick Johnson was murdered or died in a tragic accident, one thing is certain: this case has highlighted the deep divisions in American society and the ongoing struggle for justice and truth. The Johnson family's 12-year fight for answers represents both the strength of a family's love and the complexity of seeking justice in a divided nation. Theories and speculation. Various theories have emerged over the years to explain what happened to Kendrick Johnson. The official accident theory maintains that he fell into the mat while reaching for shoes and suffocated. The murder theory suggests he was killed by fellow students and his body was placed in the mat to hide the crime. Some believe there was a broader conspiracy involving law enforcement and school officials to protect the perpetrators. The racial dimension of the case cannot be ignored. Many in the black community see Kendrick's death as another example of a young black life being devalued by the justice system. They point to the quick ruling of accidental death and the apparent reluctance to thoroughly investigate potential murder as evidence of systemic racism. Meanwhile, others argue that the extensive federal investigation proves that authorities took the case seriously and that the evidence simply doesn't support the murder theory. They contend that the continued accusations against the Bell family represent a modern-day witch hunt based on speculation rather than facts. The impact of social media. The Kendrick Johnson case was one of the first major death investigations to be heavily influenced by social media. The Johnson family and their supporters used platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to keep the case in the public eye and pressure authorities to continue investigating. This social media campaign was both a blessing and a curse. It helped ensure that the case received national attention and federal investigation, but it also led to the spread of unverified information and conspiracy theories. The Bell family became targets of online harassment and threats based on allegations that multiple investigations found to be unsupported by evidence. Conclusion: an unresolved mystery. As of 2025, the death of Kendrick Johnson remains officially classified as an accident, but the controversy surrounding his death continues. The Johnson family maintains their belief that their son was murdered and that there has been a cover-up. Meanwhile, law enforcement officials and the Bell family insist that extensive investigations have found no evidence of foul play. This case serves as a powerful reminder of how difficult it can be to find truth and justice in complex situations. It highlights the importance of thorough investigations, the impact of racial dynamics on criminal justice, and the power of families to fight for their loved ones even in the face of official conclusions they refuse to accept. Whether Kendrick Johnson died in a tragic accident or was the victim of murder, his story has become part of the ongoing American conversation about justice, race, and truth. His family's unwavering determination to seek answers has kept his memory alive and has forced America to confront uncomfortable questions about how we investigate deaths and seek justice. The case reminds us that behind every statistic and every news story is a real family dealing with unimaginable loss. The Johnson family's 12-year fight for their son shows both the power of love and the pain of unanswered questions. Whatever the ultimate truth may be, Kendrick Johnson's story has become an important part of America's ongoing struggle for justice and equality. As this case continues to evolve through ongoing legal proceedings, one thing remains certain: the death of Kendrick Johnson will continue to raise questions about truth, justice, and the American legal system for years to come.